lots of this is going to be very familiar, I'm sure. I'm sure that everybody in the room, like myself and like those I share the panel with, are avid users of apps. I know certainly myself, being a self-confessed techie, I absolutely love apps in a way in which other software doesn't really do it, and I consume many, many hundreds of them all the time. In fact, the statistics that we've pulled up here, as you can see, show that most people seem to be in the same sort of category. So over 1,500 new apps per day, and on each smartphone an average of 37 apps, which to me sounds quite low actually, but that was the number which the Article 29 group came up with in their apps report, which we'll touch on later. I think the thing about apps, though, is that they're different from static software that we're traditionally used to using on desktops or maybe games consoles, and I think that's probably the theme which we're going to be looking at over the course of this session, because the thing about having an app on a smartphone or having it on a tablet means that it can do many, many other things, and that's really where the privacy challenge we're focusing on looks at. So I know myself that if I think about sort of my top 3 favourite apps, I like the British Rail app. If anybody has that here, it's a very good app. You have to pay for it, but it's certainly very useful. The thing I like about it the most is the button you can press called Get Me Home, and it tells you there and then where is the next train from where you are to get yourself home. I like the Amazon app as well, which is on my smartphone, and the thing about it is it's always on, so I can turn it on, it knows it's me, it knows what I like, it knows what I last ordered, what I'm likely to order, and it knows how I'm going to pay. So you can do that in terms of buying things, again, based on a smartphone, just really within 30 seconds. And the other app that I like the most is Google Maps. Google Maps, not Apple Maps, I should mention. I like Google Maps because unlike Apple Maps, it tells you, of course, exactly where you are. That is quite a useful thing. If, like me, you often don't know where you're going. So, I mean, you can see here just from a few of my own favourite apps that they're different from something you get on a desktop, because immediately they're interacting with you, they know where you are, they know stuff about you. They can access all sorts of information about you. Apart from knowing who you are, they know where you are, where you've been. They can probably predict where you're going to go. They can see you, of course, because tablets, smartphones have cameras. They can hear you, of course, because they've got microphones as well. They know who your friends are if they access your address book. They know what other apps you've got and what other sorts of things you like. They can look at your messages and look at your photos and so on. So I mean, it's a very different sort of thing from a static desktop. And as you can see, when you align that power and that potential invasiveness with the scope of the apps which are available, the App Store alone, there's been 50 billion apps downloaded, and Android fast catching up. So just a few basic facts and figures about it. So apps, I mean, we consume them on a massive scale. I can't think of many people that have on average 37 pieces of software. Of course, the app ecosystem is every bit as complicated as the apps that we consume. In fact, even more so. And you can see around this chart here, there are half a dozen players or so in the ecosystem that all nibble away in different sorts of areas of apps. They're nibbling, in my view, generally at the revenue streams, but also increasingly at the data, which very often, as we're going to see, is something that people are more interested in than the revenue streams. So people will be familiar with this. In fact, you'll see all of these areas represented at Privacy Laws and Business here this year in different guises. There's obviously the device manufacturers that make the cool stuff, the platforms, the handheld devices and smartphones we like to use. Then just going round, you've got the app developers themselves. Those are the clever people that make the really cool apps that we like to use. Then you've got various measuring tools, whether it's Omniture or Google Analytics, there's all sorts of them. And these are people that are looking at the payload data that's going through the apps. Often they are running analytics and insights, combining them with other data sets to learn a much richer set of information about the people who are using the apps. That information then gets passed back to different players in this ecosystem to enable them to understand their users better and target them with advertising or more customized services. You've obviously got the distributors, the people that run the platforms, so lots and lots of those, whether it's Microsoft or Apple or Google. You've got infrastructure providers, and of course we have that represented here to a degree as well, the network carriers and so on. And then going around, there's technology providers that are providing plug-in services, such as e-payment, through to the social network providers, and these days people will know that the social media is highly integrated with an app, so at the click of a button you can tell all your friends on Facebook what your latest high score is or where it is you've been and what you've done with your app. and then it takes us back around to the top again. So it's a very complicated ecosystem. What's interesting around this, and we'll look at it, is that each of these players does have a nibble at the data to a greater or lesser extent. And what the regulators have been very concerned about is the way in which all of the players in the ecosystem hand off to each other, and whether or not they're taking an overall shared responsibility for protecting people's privacy, or whether in fact it's just salami sliced and people operate in silos. And I think the basic feeling among the regulators, and perhaps my own observation, is that at the moment it's probably a bit too salami sliced to get an overall integrated approach.